All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for coming. We called a press conference to respond to some of the things that were said yesterday, our position on a few things. I'm going to read an initial statement. I'm going to go back to the statement and answer any questions. Brian Bentley from the FOP that represents the supervisors is also here, and he'll take any questions and make a statement. On November 29th, our officers were involved in a vehicle pursuit and the use of deadly force that was provoked by two individuals that had no regard for public safety and exhibited violence towards law enforcement that inevitably led to their own deaths. The events of that night are a tragedy to the families of the deceased suspects and to the officers involved. That pursuit that took place throughout the city streets and the deadly force that was used could have been avoided if the suspects would have just stopped. We're not here if they just would have stopped. Melissa Williams and Timothy Russell chose not to only endanger their own lives, but the lives of the police officers involved and the public. Attorney General Mike DeWine, BCI, East Cleveland, the Cuyahoga County Sheriff's Department, did a thorough investigation that revealed the officers' actions and their perceptions of the event that happened that night. The officers that were involved in the chase maintained professionalism and a constant concern for public safety. This was evident in the pursuit when no other civilians or police officers were harmed throughout the chase. It has been questioned why so many police vehicles were involved in the car chase and why so many officers did not request permission to enter the vehicle pursuit. The facts that an unusual circumstance grant the right for police officers to use multiple cars in the vehicle pursuit. Officers were pursuing a vehicle that was perceived to have fired a shot at police officers. That was an unusual circumstance and also an active shooter by the officers' perceptions. When a vehicle pursuit begins, all available units respond. Officers assisting in pursuits maintain radio silence for officer safety. Assisting officers allow the lead cars to broadcast in case of any split decisions that had to be made. Officers do not always ask to join into the car chase because they are unable and are concerned for fellow officers' safety. These officers should be commended for their actions. They displayed professionalism by utilizing their training, experience, and means that they had available to them in keeping the public safe. The Chief of Police is conducting an administrative review of these officers involved in the pursuit with a panel that was made up by the Chief of Police. I am disappointed by the premature judgment of the panel that has been made regarding the situation to appease the public without knowing the facts. Our supervisors and officers have already been told, prior to any facts going to the panel, that they would be facing termination, demotion, and suspensions. The Chief of Police has been disappointed from the beginning of this incident. The focus was on the shooting, and since now that the investigation pointing to it being justified, the focus is now on the chase and the policy violations. This was a perfect chase. For 25 minutes, our police officers were able to keep the public safe, have no property damage, and bring the chase to a close without any officers' injuries. Since stop sticks and a helicopter were not available, they did this with as many units as they could muster. An absolutely commendable job of individual thinking, blocking intersections along the route, notifying the public of the chase coming through, and clearing the way for people who had no concern for anyone's else safety. Right now, morale is an all-time low. At the events of November 29, 2012, our members no longer have the confidence in our chief's ability to lead, which we are requesting for him to resign.
The mayor says that he supports the chief and will not ask for his resignation. What would you say?
the mayor, the mayor's the boss, and he's going to keep the chief in there, but we're disappointed. Our morale's down. It's my job to say to everybody, I get officers right now, second guessing because they don't feel like they're being supported by the administration.
Yesterday, Mike DeWine said that 59 of the cars did not have permission to be there, in essence violating the city's pursuit policy. What is your reaction to that?
These car chases happen all over. There's 2 or 3 lead cars that are in the lead there, and for an officer to take time to get permission throughout the chase takes up airtime. I think Mike DeWine also said that it's a split decision, a split-second decision. Well, we don't know when this car chase is going to end. We want these lead cars to be able to talk throughout the whole time and tell us where they're going, what's happening, and we want to be right there when the incident's over. This is common. This happens. I think even the chief said it this morning. This is common. These things happen in every car chase, and it's important for the public to know that it's our officer safety. We're going home that night, and if we start talking, something goes bad with that lead car. You're going to feel bad that you're breaking in on that radio transmission while that car's going.
Is the radio system effective, or is it antiquated, and did that play a role in what happened?
Oh, it's antiquated. I remember years ago you were able to push a button, right, Charlie? A button, and you'd be able to get multiple channels. So it's an old system. It's not updated. I understand the policy of going to the channel that was the chase was going on, to channel 2. But if you had that one button, if it was still working, it was an updated system, you could have patched in 2, 3, 4, 5 districts at one time. Everybody would have known at that time what's going on.
So what role did it play? If you could explain that to the public.
The role
of the radio system in this whole thing.
I'm not understanding.
Basically, the Attorney General felt that the radio system, the lack of communication, was part of this failure. What is your reaction to that?
Well, all the cars that ended up into the school, except for 1 or 2 third district cars, but the majority also were all from the 2nd district. The majority of cars that started a chase all ended up into the school. The radio system, it would be nice to patch in a couple districts by one press of the button instead of.
Some supervisors did call off some officers, but they were not on the District 3 channel when they called them off, so they didn't stop. So what you're saying is, with that button that you could patch in everything and just have one main channel, that would be better, and that might have pulled some people off of this, right?
Yeah, and if it was an updated system, I would hope you would have something like that. For an officer to switch, if you have the 3rd district officers involved in a chase, they're going to have one portable on 2, the radio on 3. That's a perfect world, but you're also watching traffic. You're listening to what's going on with the radio. There's a lot of things going through a police officer's mind going in these chases. You got to watch the public. You got to, you're listening to any fatal incident that's going to happen in the end. You have a lot to concentrate on.
The mayor made it clear yesterday. The mayor made it clear yesterday that he gives all the resources to the police officers when they ask. Would you agree with that?
I think that speaks for itself.
DeWine also said that the policies have to be in place, there has to be training on them, and they have to be followed. It sounds like what you're saying and what your release is saying, that it's okay to disregard that policy if you guys feel a fellow officer is in danger or the public's in danger. Is that what you're saying, is that it's okay for officers to disregard the policy if they think that's the right thing to do?
Well, in our policies, there's an unusual circumstance, and I have not heard yet nobody has defined that to me. A police officer being shot at, a bank being robbed, a citizen being robbed, a police officer getting shot, and I think those are all unusual circumstances where we're allowed to go pursue these, we should be able to go pursue the suspects and bring them to justice.
With as many cars as you guys think are necessary?
Well,
Only people respond to the school shooting.
Well-
Nobody requested permission to go there.
yeah, if it's as many cars as it takes. Look at Officer Taylor. He got shot in the vest. 77 cars responded to him in that scene. Now, if the suspect would have gotten in a vehicle, you're damn right there's going to be 70, 80, 90 cars, going after that car. And it also goes for a citizen. If there's a robbery in place with a gun and there's innocent victims out there and the police get up there and they're chasing somebody and it goes citywide, every car's going. I mean, yes, we go for our police officers, we want to make sure we all go home safely, but we're also doing it for the citizens too.
Jeff, the report makes the case, though, that response, and obviously driven by the emotion and, justifiably so, but you show up and that overwhelming response created backlighting, flooding, floodlight problems, and crossfire. So isn't that a case that overwhelming response potentially hurt the officers?
Yeah, but there weren't, in the parking lot, there weren't 50, or what's the number, 59 cars in the parking
No,
lot.
but it didn't matter because they said those circumstances were created where officers had a hard time seeing and there was crossfire.
They were created by the cars that were there. There were 13 officers. I forget there were 7 cars.
7 cars were actually up there.
Yeah, there were 7 cars actually in there. I mean, and an officer getting shot at, 7 cars in that parking lot, I think that's justifiable. You're going to have lighting conditions if you have 1 or 2 cars. You put our red lights on, or I mean our lights on with the high beams on, stuff like that. There's conditions for everything.
Yeah, but the report is stating that the conditions were created by the very fact that there was that large response.
Right.
Because the
But you
fire
can't
that-
predict how
the
it-
fire that was heard, we only later learned was friendly fire. The inability to see was created by lights with the police cars, and they're suggesting that response in of itself created potential harm.
But we respond like that to many different places and different times. I mean, our response are like that all the time. I mean, you're going to get multiple cars in one place. I mean, just the incident that happened because it led to deadly force. Well, now it's lighting and conditioning. Well, when we go into other places in the neighborhood and we have 10, 12 cars, is there lighting conditions there? Same thing. We're trained at night. These guys work at night. They're trained at night. They know what they have as far as equipment and what's going on.
This also sounds like what you're saying is that the way officers are trained and the way that they routinely respond to things are not the way that the city policies are written. When the city policy says only 2 cars should respond, I know you said there's an unusual circumstance, but I was trying to look at cases around the country, and 62 cars is pretty unusual.
But how many times are a police officer being shot at? I mean, that's the underlying, I mean, a police officer's being shot at. And there's also state troopers, there's RTA, there's Bratton also involved. So we come together, other cities come together. I said, I don't know how many chances, I mean, how many times a police officer's been shot at and we've pursued the vehicles. You gotta go in safety, and we're going home at night, and there's too many incidents in the past where we haven't gone home, and it's a split decision. There's car chases where a guy will come out with a gun and start firing. You never know what's going to happen. We're coming in numbers, and we're going home together.